Hi and welcome back to my channel. In this video I'm going to unbox, install and configure the Poseidon-M Pro as well as the Phoenix 7-position 2-inch filter wheel, both from Player One Astronomy, so let's get going. My name is Morten and you are watching Frost Astrophotography. It is the middle of summer here, no stars in sight, and what better time to make improvements or upgrades to your astrophotography equipment and getting ready for the dark season. I've been thinking about replacing my camera for a while now, and finally made the decision to swap from the trusted ASI 294mm Pro to an APS-C size monochrome sensor camera. After looking around for some time, I finally decided that the Player One Astronomy camera lineup was looking interesting, and the Poseidon-M Pro in particular. Even though it would be fine to keep my existing 36mm filters and filter wheel for this camera and its sensor size, I thought why not make the equipment future-proof with the 7-position 2-inch filter wheel from Player One as well. Since it is almost daylight here, even in the middle of the night, I will be unable to take actual light frames at the moment. And this means that this video will be a part of a series of videos that I will make on this upgrade process for my observatory. Let's start the unboxing of the Player One Astronomy monochrome astronomical cooled camera, the Poseidon-M Pro. Now this camera is based on the popular Sony IMX571 APS-C format sensor. Let's take a look and see what is inside the box here. I will take everything out of the box first, and then we will go through exactly what is included in this box. Starting with the accessories here, we have 3 USB cables here. Starting off with the first, a 50 centimeter USB-C to USB-C cable. Then we have another 50 centimeter USB-C to USB-B cable here. Very good if you have any accessories that require this type of connection. And then we have a 2 meter USB-A to USB-C cable. Now this could be used to connect your camera to your computer, for example. There is a small cable management accessory here included if you want to use that one. It is a Velcro based one. There is also an air blower included here that you can use to clean your sensor or filters before using them. There are hexagonal screws and an hexagonal wrench or an Allen key here that you use to attach the camera to the filter wheel if you have one of those. Then we have some spacers and adapters. We have a T-mount here, 1.25 inch, that you can use if you need one of those. And you also have an included cover here that you can use for that. You have an M48 to M42 adapter, depending on what type of telescope you have to attach the camera to. And finally you have two extenders here, one 17.5 millimeters and one 20 millimeters. So if you need some back focus like I do at around 55 millimeters, you would probably use this extender together with the filter wheel. The actual camera is in a nice bag in some plastic wrapping here. I'm going to take it out so we can have a look at it. Starting off by looking at the overall design of this camera, I really like the hexagonal shape of the camera here. It stands out a little bit if you are used to ZWO cameras that are completely round. The overall build quality and finish, as well as the colors on the camera here, are exceptional, I would say. I'm really pleased with it. It feels very heavy in my hands, and there's not much plastic on this. It feels very well built, I would say. Now this camera is built on the Sony IMX571 sensor, and that is a sensor with a size of 23.5 millimeters by 15.7 millimeters. It is quite big, but still an APS-C format sensor. There is also a full format version available if you want to buy that. I would say that this size is quite big and enough for DSO imaging in general. The camera here is a 26 megapixel camera with a resolution of 6252 by 4176 pixels, and the diagonal is 28.3 millimeters. On the back of the camera you can see the fan here cooling the two-stage tech cooling unit, and that can bring the sensor temperature down to about 30 to 40 degrees below the ambient temperature of your environment. There is a 12 volt DC 5.5 by 2.1 millimeter connection here for the power to the cooling unit, and you have two USB-C connections. One for the main connection here and one for a device connection to be used, for example, with a filter wheel. On the front of the camera here you have the sensor underneath this lid, but you also have a 4-point sensor tilt plate here with 4 adjustment screws that allows you to adjust the tilt of this camera, which can be very handy in order to fine-tune your rig and setup. Now this camera, in comparison to the ASI-294mm Pro, does not have any amp glow whatsoever, even though amp glow is not that hard to get rid of, and if you ask me, nothing that you should be too afraid of. But it's always nice to not have to think about amp glow in general. Taking a look at the sensor here, you should be very careful, of course, not to touch this sensor or any filters whatsoever if you're using a filter wheel with this camera. So you can see the nice IMX571 sensor here in all its glory. And we will of course mount this camera later on to the filter wheel and then to my telescope. We are going to continue this unboxing with the Player One Astronomy Phoenix wheel, a 7-position 2-inch filter wheel that will be very nice paired with the Poseidon-M Pro camera. Let's open the box and see what we can find. I will start by taking out everything, and then we will have a look at what was included in the box here. Starting with the accessories here, we have a USB cable and we have a USB-A to a USB-C cable here. Nice quality, not too stiff. I hope this will work fine out in the cold winter nights here. Continuing on with this adapter here, it's M48 to M54, 17.5 millimeters in size. We have an hexagonal wrench here, or Allen key, a Phillips screwdriver, and then we have some screws, and we also have some mounting accessories here if you are using this filter wheel with 50mm unmounted filters, but I would suggest using the 2-inch mounted filters for this filter wheel. Here it is, the Phoenix wheel, 7 position for 2-inch filters. It's very sleek, I would say, even though it is very big in size. Keep in mind that it has to house 7 2-inch mounted filters here. If you compare that to the ZWO 7 position for 36mm filters that I've been used to using, it is much larger, but the finish and build quality and colors are exactly the same as for the Poseidon camera. So I'm really pleased with this. I really like the design here. There's not much to show here. We can start off by looking at the USB-C connector here. Now this is where you connect the filter wheel to your camera or to your computer. The side with the motor here is the side that you attach the camera to. So the camera will be mounted like this here on the filter wheel, but first we will have to remove the tilt plate here and attach the tilt plate to the filter wheel. On the back here you can see some screws, and you simply remove these and remove the lid here, and then you have access to mount the filters that you want to put in here. And let me just say, one advantage of using 2-inch filters here is that they are mounted and there is no way to position them incorrectly. If you have unmounted filters, like the 36mm that I have, you have to make sure that you position them correctly. There is a correct side that is supposed to be turned towards the camera, and there is an incorrect side, and that might matter more or less depending on which filters you have in your filter wheel. But like I said, you don't have to worry about that when you're using mounted filters. Together with this camera and filter wheel, I'm going to try out the LRGB S-series filters for 2-inch. Now this is the luminance filter here, a 2-inch. The red filter here, the green filter, and the blue filter here. I also have the narrowband S series, the sulfur 2 here, the H alpha filter here, the O3 filter here. Now these 3 narrowband filters, they are 7 nanometers, and I currently have the 7 nanometer ZWO filters in my ZWO filter wheel, and of course I've thought about getting some high-end filters like Chroma, or some medium-end filters like N.I.N.A or Optolong here. We will see what the future holds. But I thought it would be interesting to test these filters here. Now this is the sulfur 2 filter, and you have to be very careful when you handle these filters here. You don't want to touch the glass of this filter. It might be hard to get fingerprints or other types of contaminations off this filter. If you have some dust specks, for example, you could use this air blower to get those off before you mount them inside the filter wheel. I would recommend you also using gloves, even though I'm not using that right now when you're mounting them, just to be sure that you don't have any greasy stains or anything like that on the filter. It will be hard to do a scientific comparison. I will compare single exposures with these filters together with the Poseidon-M Pro camera, with images from my 294mm Pro ZWO camera with the ZWO filters, just to try to compare things like star size and halo occurrences. That was the introduction. It is time to mount the camera on top of the filter wheel and the filters inside the filter wheel. It is time to mount the filters inside the Phoenix wheel here. We'll start by turning it over like this, and then locate the screws positioned here on the filter wheel. You can use the hexagonal wrench or Allen key included in this kit, but you can also use any one of your own. I prefer to have a bigger one that would allow me some better traction, I would say, than the small one that is included. So we'll start by loosening these screws here. Now I finished removing the screws. I will remove the lid here of the filter wheel. And there's nothing special about the inside here. We will put that aside for now. We can take a look at the internal workings of the filter wheel here. You can see that the filter positions are numbered from 1 here until 7 here, the last one. And there's nothing much to do in here besides threading the filters on in each position. In my case, I want the filters in L, R, G and B for broadband first, and then I want my S, H and O for positions 5, 6 and 7. So we will start by making sure that there is no dust inside here. Starting with the luminance filter here. This will go into position 1. There is actually no way to place this incorrectly because of the fact that they are threaded filters here. So this is the luminance filter, and you simply thread it with the narrower part, the bottom part here. You thread it with that one down towards the filter wheel. So just make sure that you don't have any dusts on the actual filter. Place the filter gently into position and then screw it in place. Make sure that it is a tight fit, but don't excessively put too much tension on the filter. Just ever so slightly with your fingertip, make sure that it is fastened correctly in there. When you are finished with installing all of the filters, make sure that they are fastened correctly without over tensioning it. And then go through the filter wheel thoroughly once again with the blower to make sure that there are no dust whatsoever in here. It's so easy to get some dust flakes in here, and you don't want to have that floating around in here. Before I put the lid on, let me just show you the filters here. It is a very beautiful collection of filters here inside the Phoenix filter wheel. I'm really impressed with the build quality here. It will be interesting to see how they perform. Take the lid, place it carefully back onto the filter wheel like this, and gently reattach all of the screws that you removed earlier. So this is the completed installation, the Phoenix wheel 7 position 2-inch filters. And make sure that you protect the area here now, so you don't get any dust inside the filter wheel after the installation. It is time to address the camera here. We have the Poseidon-M Pro here, and I'm going to remove the tilt plate here, and you can do that by unscrewing the 4 screws that you have here. Now when you have unscrewed the 4 screws here, you can simply lift the camera and then it is free. But beware of the sensor here now, so you don't damage it. Make sure that you keep that covered. So I will put this down here, and remember that this is up, so this position here on the tilt plate is up. So I will have to remove the cover here on the tilt plate. When you have removed the cover, you will notice that in order to get alignment, let's say that this is up here, there's no actual screw hole straight up. So you have to tilt the camera ever so slightly to get it to align to the screw holes here and attach it like so. Carefully take the first screw and place it in the screw hole of the tilt plate. Now we have the tilt plate attached to the filter wheel. Just make sure that you don't have any dust here. Now you put the camera carefully back onto the tilt plate, and then you fasten the 4 screws that you loosened earlier. There you have the finished product. We have the Poseidon-M Pro camera mounted onto the Phoenix wheel, and this is what it looks like on the other side here. You can see the camera sensor, and it weighs a little bit, definitely, but it will be interesting to see how this will perform on my telescope later on. There was another spacer here delivered with the filter wheel. It is the same size, 17.5 millimeter, but it has the M54 connection here and the 48 connection on the other side. So this will be used on the filter wheel and then attach the other side to the telescope. Before doing anything, I will take the original cap here for the camera and I will attach that to the spacer here, which will give a protection for the camera sensor while not having this attached to the telescope. Take the filter wheel like this and then take your spacer here and gently attach it here to the filter wheel. Make sure that it is tight on there, but as always, don't overdo it with the torque here. Just make sure that it is on. And now this is completely sealed. You have the lid here and you have the camera on this side, so you don't need to worry about any dust making it into the filter wheel. Here you can see my telescope, and I have the Skywatcher camera rotator on here, and then I have the field flattener and reducer on here. And the filter wheel should be able to screw directly onto the flattener here, giving it the correct back focus of 55 millimeters that I need. Be careful when you are screwing this onto your image train, making sure that you thread it correctly, and also make sure to tighten it, but don't over tighten it. I have my camera rotator on here, so I can simply loosen the screws on that, and then I can rotate the whole assembly here as I want, and then I can place it straight down, which gives me a little bit better balance on the whole thing. So something like that, the camera with filter wheel, the spacer here, and then I have my field flattener reducer and the camera rotator on the focus tube here. We are finished with the assembly here, and now we are moving on to the next phase of installing and configuring this to work with N.I.N.A. We are on the computer that I use for controlling my observatory and gear, and we will start by downloading the drivers we need. First of all, the camera driver for Windows, and we are going to scroll down here and also download the ASCOM driver for the camera and the ASCOM driver for the filter wheel here. I saw that there is a version 7 of the ASCOM platform. Since the drivers here are for 6.5, I didn't dare to upgrade the ASCOM platform right now. Maybe I will try that later on. We will go down into the folder here and extract the files that we need. You can put them directly into the download folder or anywhere else you would like. It's only a single file for each of these driver packages. We'll start by installing the camera driver here, and for some reason Defender thinks it might be prudent to ask if there's any security issues that you know about. You simply just click Run Anyway, and then you install the native camera drivers into Windows. When that is finished, the application should let you know, and you just click Install Finish. Continue on with the ASCOM camera drivers, same procedure, allow them to execute, and then just click through the installation package. If you have a previous version, I did a test install earlier, that's why it says that it already has an installed driver. Then you just click uninstall that one and then uninstall the new, so to speak. And then we have the ASCOM filter driver. I would think it also will say that there is a previous version on here, but we will just say uninstall that and then install the driver. So now we have all of the 3 drivers installed. We can open up N.I.N.A and we will start to make some configuration. And of course, we will also test the camera connection and cooling, and also set some parameters that you need to set. Entering N.I.N.A. So if this is the first time you start N.I.N.A, you won't see Poseidon-M Pro camera here, and that's just because I did this already earlier also. So if you have your old camera here, let's say my old ZWO camera, now that's not connected right now, but if you have another camera, or if your old camera is disconnected, then this will be blank. So just go into the list here and select the camera. This is the native driver. I think that's a good choice. And you click on the connect button here in N.I.N.A, and that way it will connect to your camera, and we see that it was successful. Before we do anything else here in the configuration, I will also check the filter wheel here, and the same procedure here. If there's no filter wheel selected, it will be blank here. If your old filter wheel is still connected to the computer, it will show that one, but click on the little arrow, go in here and select the POA Phoenix wheel and click connect, and it should come up like this. Now we know that that works. I'm going to disconnect the filter wheel, and I'm going to disconnect the camera, and then I'm going to use my connect all button here to make sure that everything in my observatory can connect, and that there's no problems whatsoever with the observatory mount or gear in general. Everything seems to be working as intended. It even starts up my guiding here. I will stop that for now and minimize it because we're not going to use that. So everything is working for now. My initial impression of the installation phase here is very positive, I would say. Just a quick, simple install of the drivers, and N.I.N.A will find this camera and filter wheel without any problems whatsoever. Before diving into the configuration here, we are going to start cooling. You can see that I have about 20 degrees, 21 degrees in my observatory right now. I will start a cooling to 30 degrees below ambient temperature here, and that is -10. And we will see how long that will take, and we will also see how much power is actually used. So we're gonna let that run for now. It started at 11:17:39. So we will leave that for now and talk about some of the settings here. You have a gain setting and you have an offset setting. I will come back to that when the camera has cooled down. There's an USB limit here that you leave on default, and then you have two different readout modes. Now this can be set to normal or low noise, but recommended from Player One is for deep space or deep sky objects. You should use low noise mode, so I'm going to use that. You also have two settings for the dew heater strength, and that is 10 by default, and you have fan speed, and that is 70 by default. I don't think you need to adjust these. I'm not going to do it right now. I'm also not going to be able to image right now, so I will come back to this in an upcoming video where I actually take some images with the camera here. On the right side here, where you have the cooling and warming, you can also toggle the dew heater on and off. We will also come back to that in a later video when we are actually doing some imaging. Now you can see that the sensor temperature is -10 degrees here, and I would say it took roughly 3 minutes to reach -10 degrees, and that is 30 degrees below ambient temperature in my observatory. And the camera is currently using around 40% power, and I must say that is impressive. I'm going to try and run it to -15 here, and that is 35 degrees below ambient temperature, and we will see how much cooling power is used at that level. In the meantime, let's take a look at the filter wheel here. Now on this tab there's nothing much to do besides the ability to change filters, obviously, but you can see on the right here you have filter name. Now this is a remnant from my old filter wheel, and this should read 1 through 7 in your system if you haven't configured it, but you don't want to have filters 1 through 7 when you are using the sequencer or anything else. You really like the filters to be named for which filter it is. So that you can do in the options button here, and then you click on equipment, and in the section here for filter wheel you can actually assign a name to each position. So if you remember me configuring my filter wheel with the filters earlier, I had LRGB in position 1, 2, 3, 4, and then S2, HA, and O3 in 5, 6, 7. So simply put those names in here, and when you are using the filter wheel here, you will see the names. And if you're also doing a sequence programming an image acquisition for an object, it will be possible for you to select which filter is to be used. And that is simply done with the filter selection here. So it's much easier to select, for example, HA filter than, let's say, number 6. And you have to remember that. So this is very useful, I would say. The camera is around 15 degrees below freezing now, minus 15 Celsius. And it's actually not using that much more cooling power. It's around 43%. And that is surprising because we are at 35 degrees below ambient temperature here. So this is very surprising. I'm very pleased with this. So let's talk about the gain and offset. Now, I'm not an expert. There are other people out there more of an expert on these matters. You can probably watch an hour-long video explaining this in more detail, but the default gain here, you can look at the manufacturer's camera analysis and determine at which gain it is best to be, reducing the noise as much you can without sacrificing image quality or depth in the image here. So that is suggested to be around or at 125. When it comes to the offset, this is the offset from the left of the histogram, so to speak. If you take an image, I will set this to 50, for example, here. We're going to go to imaging, and we are going to take a short exposure, 0.001 second here. Now this is basically a dark. And I have the statistics tab in N.I.N.A here. You can see the histogram all the way to the left. There's no good zoom feature in this little tool. It's rudimentary, but the goal of the offset here is to detach the histogram from the absolute left side of the histogram without sacrificing any pixels. And this minimum value here shows the number of pixels at that position right now. So you can see there are 2 pixels here. So if we change this to 250, for example, and we take another exposure, you can see that there's only 1 pixel here at this position. And now the histogram is much further to the right here. So if we go back and change this to 1 and see what happens when we take an exposure, you can see that we have a reading of 0, and you don't want this reading to be 0 because you want to have the histogram offset from the left side. But at this position we have a lot of pixels. Is it like 3 million pixels? No, it's 388,000 pixel-ish. And we don't want that, of course. So you have to experiment with a value that will offset without losing pixels. So I did some testing on this and came to the conclusion that 25 is a good number here. You have a 35 value of minimum here with only 1 pixel present. So that is how you can check for the correct or a good, I would say. I don't think there's a correct or not correct offset value here. So I've chosen 25 with the 125 gain here. And one thing to remember here is that when you set the gain and offset settings, and if you then take calibration frames, you would need to redo calibration frames if you change the gain or the offset. So I think it is important to set the gain and offset early on and make sure that you are happy with them, and then you can take your calibration frame library and you can use those for darks, for example. But if you change these, you have to redo the calibration frames, and that will have to be done for all temperatures as well. It is still running stable here at -15, 43% cooling power. Now, I do want to check for amp glow. It is supposed to not have any amp glow for this camera. I'm used to amp glow with my ASI-294mm Pro, so I'm actually going to take an image here, a 5-minute exposure. This is with the lens cap on, and it is in my observatory now. Even though it's not dark outside, it's darker in my observatory and the lens cap is on. I'm going to take a 5-minute exposure here, and then we will see if we can notice any amp glow whatsoever for this camera. The 5-minute exposure is completed, and even though this is only the automatic stretch in N.I.N.A, I cannot see a single remnant of amp glow for this camera. Even if I zoom in here and scroll down the right side. For my ASI-294mm Pro, it would be a big white plume here of amp glow. So fairly pleased, even though this is a rudimentary test. I will make some dark libraries and revisit this later when I can present a stack of, let's say, 40 dark frames, and we will verify that also. I'm going to turn off the cooling now, but I'm going to show you some other settings that you might need to change if you are changing the camera in N.I.N.A. It can be easy to forget. So let's go down to the flat wizard first. If you had an old camera like me, the 294mm Pro, you might have used bin 2. So don't forget to change this to bin 1 with this camera. And if you have configured every filter like I have, please don't forget to change the binning in here as well for all of the filters to 1 from 2. In the options tab here, you can also visit plate solving. Here you also have some settings in regards to binning. So if you have 2 there, change that to 1. And if you have the gain setting changed like I did, don't forget to change that as well to bin 1 gain 125. You also want to visit the autofocus settings, and here you also have a binning setting. So if you're using another bin now, make sure to change this as well from bin 2 to bin 1 in my case. Other than that, you don't need to change any settings in here, not when it comes to the main camera anyway. The cooling has been disabled and the temperature is slowly rising. I think there's a little bit of a delay for that sensor to catch up to the actual ambient temperature, or it has a little bit to go before reaching the ambient temperature, I would say. But for now, the installation went without any problems, and the configuration was not as difficult as people might think. There's just a few settings that you need to keep track on in N.I.N.A. I will disconnect all of my devices now, and I will also disconnect and close my auto guiding, and that actually concludes the installation and configuration of drivers and settings in N.I.N.A for my AstroPhotography Observatory computer. What can I say? I am extremely pleased with the camera and filter wheel so far. Everything from the design to the quality and feel of the products make you think that there's been some serious thoughts behind the development of these products. The installation and configuration of the products went without any problems whatsoever. There are so many challenges and things you have to think about in this astrophotography hobby. So when it comes to the gear, you just want things to work, and with these products from Player One, it is very promising that that is the case. I will return as soon as I can see stars here with the first light of the camera and also comparisons to my old camera. Thank you so much for watching this video, and as always, if you like it, please give it a thumbs up and consider subscribing to my channel if you're not already doing so. If you're still able to do astrophotography, I wish you have clear skies, but if you don't, I wish you have a warm and bright summer.